Welcome to Ideagen TV. Today we have a special edition of Ideagen Hollywood led by Steven Tingus, also chair of Ideagen Los Angeles. Steven, welcome.
Thank you, George. How are you?
You know what? Always great when I see you, Steven. Always great when I see you, my friend. And we were just lamenting that we've been friends now for over 2 decades. Who knew? So
we're aging, but we're still got it, right?
That's right. Well, it's so exciting. I know you have an incredible guest today on Ideagen Hollywood, and we can't wait to hear this interview. It's guaranteed to be inspiring for the millions of people that will see it on Ideagen TV and through our ubiquitous distribution model across the planet. Steven, take it away.
Thank you, George. I am so delighted today. I thought the last show was a groundbreaker, but today we got something special for our viewers. You know, many of us that are, my age have lived through TV's history and have seen a lot of good work and a lot of bad work on TV, but not today. Today, I'm so proud to invite Brent Miller. Brent Miller is a TV and film producer, and also, boy, am I envious, but he is the head of Act 3 Productions, led by none other than Norman Lear. I've known Norman Lear for a handful of years now, but actually old enough to remember the days of All in the Family, Good Times, and other shows that really made a difference in the social discussion of issues. And like Pose and other programs, and This Is Us, other programs that we're watching now, these are issues that we're all facing. And I need to take my hat off and thank Mr. Norman Lear and to thank Brent Miller for stepping up to the plate, pushing back, and telling stories that we want to see ourselves on TV. So with that, welcome, Brent. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for that introduction, Steve.
Please introduce yourself a little bit to our audience before we delve into some awesome questions.
What specifically would you like to know?
Oh, just how you got to this point. What, really gets you up in the morning with regard to the creative freedom that you're able to embrace with Act 3 Productions?
Well, I think what gets me up in the morning is the fact that my business partner is going to be 99 this month. And if he's getting up every morning, then there's no reason I can't. But I'll give you, a lot of people ask how we met. And the truth is, it was rather serendipitous how we met. Prior to what I'm doing now, I had a business that was focused primarily in live events, and anything from social events to corporate events to live events, as like the Super Bowl halftime show or the World Cup or the award shows, the variety of award shows that are out there. But as I said, I also did social events and personal events. And there was a woman I used to work with quite often named Sharon Sachs, who had essentially cornered me on a Friday. She had a lot coming up in her slate, and she said, "Hey, would you commit to me for the next 6 months? I've got a handful of things that I could really use your help with. And it made me a little nervous because I had been freelancing for quite some time and I really enjoyed that freedom. And so I said no on that Friday, but then felt guilty as I was sitting at home all weekend. And Sunday night, I called her at home and I said, Sharon, you've got me the next 6 months, whatever you need. And the very next day, Norman Lear had called her. It was a Monday morning, and he said, I'm turning 85. My wife's turning 60. We've been married 20 years, and we want to do a big blowout party, 145 years of the Lears. And I want you to hire someone to work just with me. And she said, I think I have the perfect person. And on that Tuesday morning, the very next day, I went into his office. We met, and we've been together ever since. It really happened just that way.
Well, it's amazing in and of itself, but you know, as I know, it takes those introductions to meet people with like-minded aims and understanding of what a positive and creative relationship is like. So I think it's a win-win for you both. And you should be very proud of yourself and where you've come to in your career. It's amazing.
Well, I thank you for saying that. And I like that you acknowledge it's a win-win for both, because the truth is that I came into his life when he needed someone like me, and he came into mine when I needed someone like him. And neither one of us had any reason to regret it. It's been almost 15 years now. And we've really, we've grown together. And yeah. I don't think when we first started working together, especially under the Act 3 banner, after we finished the birthday party, did we ever know where it was going to go? I think it was one of those things that let's just kind of see what happens and where it goes. But Norman is a very collaborative person. And, you know, that's something that you don't get often from a boss, from a mentor, from even friends sometimes, you know. And I've been very fortunate that he's you know, extremely collaborative, and he tends to think he is the age of his peer, or he is his peer, whoever he's talking to and working with at the moment.
Yeah, so, I know. I'm with him when I'm with him, and like Jerry Jewell, we're with him. He talks to you rather than talking to somebody.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, he really connects with everyone that he meets. And I think that's what makes him so special as a human being. And he happens to be in the entertainment industry. So how important is that in a very interesting industry, to say the least?
Well, and I think it's important because he recognizes the gift of the platform that he has, and he uses that in the right way. And not all people do. I think more people do now than they did years ago.
Yeah.
But he certainly recognizes and recognized all those years ago in 1971 when All in the Family hit the you know,
right,
television, that this was a platform that could be used to have these kinds of conversations that we all care about, that are socially and politically relevant to the times we're living.
Right, exactly. So I wanted to ask you, what would you tell your younger self about the future? And would you have changed your path at all to get to where you are today?
Oof. It's funny to think of my younger self, because I still think I'm young. But my much younger self,
yes,
I would tell that person, I think to trust in his gut, and make sure that he recognizes that he's just as good as the others that he surrounds himself with. and not to feel intimidated by the upbringing that he had, and realize that despite where I come from and my upbringing, that I still have the ability to play with the majors, if you will. I would give myself that advice, and I think that I want to say that I listened to that self-advice in some way, but I definitely know that I struggled at times in trusting that my intuition was spot on.
Yeah, I can relate to you because, I started off in politics after grad school, but when I was a kid and watching Mr. Lear's TV shows, I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment industry to make things more inclusive, even before we all start using diversity and inclusion. It was just like, we were living it at the time, but, we didn't have the labels that we have now. And I think people like Mr. Lear and myself, given our different paths, just embraced it because that's where our souls were with regard to, approaching society. And, it's interesting how we have evolved not only as a society, but as an industry,
For sure. And I think there's a lot more evolving that needs to happen. It's just, as the industry changes at such an exponential rate, it's so hard to keep up with all the networks and the streamers, right, what people want, what the mandate is for this one versus that one. And at first it's a broad comedy, then it's a dramedy that they want, then it's a half-hour drama. It's all over the place. And some of it I want to think is cyclical, and sometimes I think it's just a mad dash race to see who can rise to the top before someone else. It's purely a competition. So I think that there's room for everybody in this business, for sure. And I think as it has grown in the way it has, there's room for all kinds of shows, all kinds of characters, and all kinds of representation. What we watch on television should be representative of the world that we're living in.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do, Brent, is, obviously I have a policy background, is I don't want to hit that like others in my community. I'll be honest, I don't want to hit the industry over the head, but if we use current demographic data and we pledge to ensure that programs represent those percentages of, communities and underrepresented communities, then I think we're being authentic and we're not strong-arming, studio execs, but we're saying, this is where we are, this is our viewers, and this is what will sell,
Yeah, it shouldn't be about checking a box, right. It should just be authentic representation.
Exactly. Like if you walk on the street, who are you going to see? All kinds of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the people that you see that you really don't know a lot about. It's those stories that need to educate us all. And, the work that you do with Mr. Lear, tackles that need by the viewers,
Yeah, we went. It was so interesting when we decided to take on One Day at a Time with a Latinx family. We had 3.5 seasons. Well, we had 4 seasons, but our 4th season got cut in half because of the pandemic.
Right.
But the reason to make them Latinx at first, to be perfectly honest, was more of a business decision on recognizing that there was a lack of representation of Latinx families out there. So it was first business and how can we sell this? And thinking in the sense, well, if there's a market for this population, this demographic, this huge demographic that's out there, why are not people biting? You know, why are they not exploring? Why are they not creating for this demographic? So to me, it was a no-brainer of this is an easy way to approach reimagining a show that was so successful back in the 70s and 80s,
right,
and giving it a fresh take and giving it an authentic take to today, which is why we ended up going with a Cuban-American family. I mean, we went Cuban-American as opposed to Mexican-American or Puerto Rican because Gloria Calderon-Kellett, who was our co-showrunner, is Cuban-American. And so she could speak to it from a very authentic place. And she's also a mother of two, as is her partner in this, Mike Royce, who is a mother of two. So it was we got really lucky with bringing One Day at a Time back in the way that we did. Obviously, the critics loved it, but for whatever reason, the population or the demographic that people thought would watch didn't, according to those that know, and who knows if that's true or not. But ultimately, you know, we were the little engine that could. I mean, we were the first show to ever be resurrected from the cancellation of a streamer and brought to, you know, broadcast television, and then to go from, you know, Netflix to Pop TV, then to CBS, and then end with an animated episode. I think we once again, maybe it's because Norman's on our side, we made a little history there.
Yeah, you should be very proud of. What an incredible creative team in and of itself. So, you know, recap, foretell what studios are, you know, and studios are going to do. All we can do is tell a good story.
Right.
Yeah. So how did you, I mean, you told us that you were, you know, involved in live production. As a teenager, how did you know you wanted to get into the entertainment business?
It's funny. I was even younger than a teenager. I was. I always loved stage, so I was in plays and musicals throughout my whole life.
Yeah.
But I remember in I think it was 1985, watching the Grammy Awards and Michael Jackson breaking this record for all of the awards he won with Thriller. And Thriller was my favorite album, and I was a big Michael Jackson fan.
Right.
And I remember laying on the top bunk of my bed. My brother was asleep in the bottom bunk, and I remember my mom, we had this black and white TV that was in our room. And she came in and she said, "You have to go to bed." You know, we had school the next day. And I remember turning it off, but then turning it on with no sound so that she wouldn't know. And I watched the entire award show because I was just hoping that Michael would keep winning. And there was something about that award show when I went to bed that night that I knew that I would be in entertainment in some way. I didn't know how, I didn't know which side of it, but I just loved it. And I loved the impact that Michael had made around the globe. You know, obviously this is pre anything that we've heard since then, whether, you know, those accusations are true or not. You know, we'll never know. But you know, I have to say, like, that was probably the moment where I decided I was going to pursue entertainment.
Mm-hmm. For me, it was not being able, I think we're about the same age, but I think for me, it was not being able to go out and play with the kids in the late 60s and early 70s, where I watched a lot of daytime TV. And one of the shows beside General Hospital was What Life to Live. And I remember even as a 7, 8-year-old, I wrote to Erica Slezak at What Life to Live saying, you guys should develop a disabled, or at that time, handicapped character to be on One Life to Live, hit, hit, hit. And she actually wrote me back with a headshot and said, you know what, young man, that's a really good idea. And it was with that feedback that I got from her in New York. I knew someday I would get to where I am. But at the time, I was like a medical researcher in grad school. And then I went political to make a difference in law. But now I'm doing what I felt I would always do, and at least in my position, I can educate and help creatives like you reach their goals with regard to storyline and authenticity.
That's great. That's a great story. I love that you took the initiative to write that letter.
Oh yeah, I was very, it's like I love to communicate, and they were very kind, and it's just a good memory,
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to ask you, obviously, Oscar So White a couple years ago started this whole movement towards greater diversity and inclusion. How do you think we've come since then? Because I represent, obviously, the disability community, and we represent anywhere from 20 to 25% of the population, but only 2.5% of characters in scripted TV and obviously film are characters with disabilities. Because you're so active in underrepresentation, that 95% of those roles are filled by able-bodied actors. Hence, people with disabilities, the Asian community, the LGBTQ community, and the Hispanic community were all underrepresented. What is your view on where we were and where we are today?
Well, I think it gets better and better each year, to be honest. I mean, if I go back to, thinking in college when, I was a gay man that was not out at school and terrified of ever becoming out, and not even really realizing if that was who I was. I had a lot of internal issues with that. But I remember seeing Will and Grace for the first time and just falling in love with the fact that here's this show finally with, these two gay men and having a good time, and it's on, primetime television, and people are watching it and people are loving it and people are falling in love with these characters. And, that to me was a pretty groundbreaking show that happened back then. And I think that we continue to have these groundbreaking moments. I mean, what's happening now with Pose, I think is terrific. I love that show. I love those actors. I think, Laverne Cox, who I would call the matriarch of the trans community, she was groundbreaking herself in what she did with Orange is the New Black. And then, fortunately, we're now working with her on a project that I'm very excited about, and hopefully everybody will be able to see soon. But, to think about her and her growing up and wondering if she would ever see herself on television, let alone literally see herself on television. I think that says a lot. And I think, there's still, as you pointed out, there's still a lot of room for shows that are not representing the disabled community as well as they should. Anyway, to answer your question is, I do think it's grown, and I think it continues to grow, and I think it continues with all of these conversations that we're having. That helps the growth happen. I do think that we're walking a fine line, though, of becoming overly PC and eliminating some of the conversation that I think should happen out of fear of cancel culture. And I think that is what makes me nervous, because it's a fine line to walk. You know what happened with Rita on Stephen Colbert the other night. I don't know if you watched that. And
Right.
you know, she had made some comments that were insensitive, but it wasn't what she meant. It was, they came out insensitive because she was in the moment and she was on a live talk show, and she's 89 years old. But at the end of the day, for her to get all the backlash, I was disappointed, because she's done nothing but fight for equal rights and inclusivity her whole life.
Oh yeah.
And to have people feel that she was not, someone who represents that, made me sad.
Yeah, I agree, because like I said, I was fortunate to get to know her and know that's unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that like to take things out of context.
Yeah.
And I think you need to know the person first before you make a judgment. And I like most of my peers, probably because I'm, former White House political. I don't like to make judgments about people unless I know who they are. And I don't think we need to hit the industry over the head and say, shame on you, shame on you. We need to foster new talent and new creative executives so we get to a better place.
I agree with you. I love there's a whole team of people, and you probably know better than I, that are building this new school in downtown LA. Have you heard about this?
Yes.
And I think that's terrific. I think that's the right way to go. That's the right way to put our efforts towards helping the issue, by helping educate and helping bring opportunity for people who don't, might not otherwise have it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's all about opportunity to show, prove yourself, and learn, and be a resource, because you never know. You may be working for one person today, another person tomorrow, and come back to the other person with a whole new set of tools, that they want. So you just never know. You just need to be a good human with a lot of talent and a lot of foresight about what we and people want to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that.
So my last question, Brent, is there anything on the stove that you are working on? Obviously, you can't talk about it, but tell our audience what your hopes are for the future as far as development projects.
Well, I can tell you that the show I mentioned earlier, called Clean Slate, with Laverne Cox and George Wallace. We're very excited about that, and hoping that IMDb and Amazon will greenlight us for the full season. We're still in the script phase, but it's a show that essentially is loosely based on Laverne's upbringing, and then how you get along with your parents at 20 years later, when you've been gone for a while. So it's a sweet, I think, important comedy that will explore a lot of important issues that I don't think yet have been explored in the way that we want to explore them. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about, we have a young adult show, YA show, that we haven't really announced yet, that it takes place in Mexico and as well as Arizona, and can't give too much information about it, but it has been announced. It's called Loteria, but Loteria is a game that is played in Mexico, actually all over the world. But it's the Mexican form of bingo, but with pictures instead of numbers. And we've put this into a Felipe Vargas, a young writer, has turned this into a really great family story, YA story, but something kind of unique to Act 3 that we haven't explored before. That excites me. We also have another show that is based on a true story that unfortunately we can't talk too much about, but I can tell you that is taking a deep dive into LGBTQ issues.
Right.
And this is Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So it's a little bit of a period piece that I think will be a lot of fun. Also, a world that aligns with our brand, if you will. And then, of course, we are bringing back another special live in front of a studio audience. We will be announcing that relatively soon. But our hope is to bring that back in December. And I can't give you the shows yet, but we're going to explore possibly a different decade. Norman has an extensive library to deal with. So we have a lot of shows to fool around with.
Right. Well, I can't wait. And I hope to get an invite. But anyway,
sure.
I think it's exciting. And, one thing about Mr. Lear, as long as we love him and keep him engaged, and, we all win. We all win by authentic storytelling. And you, again, should be so proud to be a part of that team. And I just want to thank you as a peer that is working as hard as you to ensure authenticity and true talk, that, your work is truly appreciated.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for showcasing this and talking about it and having these conversations. And also, you talk about authenticity. There are 2 films out right now. I don't know when this episode will be airing, but if your viewers are able to get to the cinema, 2 projects, not only the Rita Moreno documentary that we've done, and if they're not able to see it in time before it leaves the cinema, then it'll be out on American Masters PBS October 5th. So we can look forward to seeing that there. And then if not that, our other film called I Carry You With Me, which is Heidi Ewing's directorial debut when it comes to narrative storytelling.
Right.
And it's a beautiful film, a hybrid film of both documentary footage and narrative. She wrote the script with Ellen Page, and it's just I can't speak highly enough of that film. And I had nothing to do with it at all creatively. From a business standpoint, we supported her from the Sony side of things.
Right.
But creatively, this is all Heidi's baby, and she's I guess we keep it all in the family, as you say, because she's one of us, and she aligns with the same brand of kind of storytelling that we all are attracted to.
Yeah. I don't know about you. I mean, this is off the cuff, but I don't know about you, but I feel that working even though you don't want a part of a project, just to be able to give your hand out to people and support them and offer them creative advice, which I've been very fortunate to know the best, like you. I think because I just am myself and I don't pretend to want or expect anything, but just doing real discussion. It just seems that our community gets a lot closer. Have you felt that?
Absolutely. I think these, having these panels and these conversations or the one-on-one talks is great. I mean, it's great for all of us. I get just as much out of it as you do, and hopefully as your readers are, or as your viewers are.
Right. I think it's important to give everything a mix, to know that we're not alone. We're all in this together, and we're all trying to make things better. So I want to thank you, Brent, for your time. I know you're so busy right now, but I appreciate it as a friend of your mentor, and I appreciate your work. And I really hope that we can meet soon and see what we can work together on. But I appreciate everything you do.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate everything you're doing. And we will get together soon, because now that this pandemic I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So
Yes,
just race to the end of the tunnel.
I know it's been a hard 2 years, but Brent, thank you for being our guest today, and best of luck come the fall.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.